It's election year in the European Parliament. In May, you'll get the chance to vote for new MEPs to represent you in Brussels and Strasbourg. We've already heard from the main political parties in England and Wales. This time we're returning our attention to Northern Ireland. So with me in the European News studio are the Northern Ireland's current MEPs. All three are hoping to convince you that they deserve your vote. So, Diane Dodds for the Democratic Unionist Party, we've got Martina Anderson from Sinn Féin and Jim Nicholson from the Ulster Unionists. Let me start with you, Diane Dodds. What would you say have been your main achievements on behalf of your constituents over the last 5 years?
Well, you know, it has been a huge privilege, but also a huge responsibility to represent Northern Ireland in the European Parliament. During that time, we've worked extremely hard on issues that really matter to people in Northern Ireland.
So what kind of issues have you been working on?
Agriculture. We've been working on the reform of the Common Agricultural Policy. We've delivered a policy that over 7 years will bring €2.3 billion in direct support to Northern Ireland's farmers. That is a hugely significant chunk of money that goes into supporting agriculture and agri-food in Northern Ireland and thereby growing the economy. In fisheries, we've been working on the reform of the Common Fisheries Policy. We've been working on issues that matter to people in Northern Ireland.
Issues that matter to people in Northern Ireland. Jim Nicholson, what have you been working on whilst Diane Dodds has been winning fisheries and farming?
Well, with the greatest respect, I have spent 350 hours during the CAP reform as a shadow rapporteur on the reform of the CAP, and that was quite a lot of time consuming and sometimes extremely boring, let me tell you. Work in the committees, and especially when you get into trying to find the compromises as the shadow rapporteur. But you know, this Parliament has changed dramatically from any previous Parliament insofar as this is the first Parliament where we had Lisbon effect and we had the power of co-decision. So in effect, we were actually responsible for delivering the best, and there was also a lot of work to be done on the Environment Committee, the Regional Affairs Committee, and many other issues outside of that within the European Parliament. Probably for me, and I've enjoyed quite a lot of time in the European Parliament, but the one I've really enjoyed was being the coordinator for the ECR group on agriculture, would give me a total insight into how the committees actually run.
Agricultural issues then from Jim Nicholson. Martina Anderson, you took over the seat during the term in 2012 from Barbara de Bruyn. So in that short time that you've been in Brussels and Strasbourg, what have you been able to achieve?
Well, it certainly has been a challenge, but it's been a challenge that I have been up to. And I believe that my track record, particularly on trying to restrict the sale of tobacco for young people, 19 children smoke in the north of Ireland every year. Funding opportunities for SMEs and for community and voluntary sector. I've been around every area in the north, engaging with groups and organisations about other funding streams that are available, and an EU youth strategy, trying to ensure that we get more investment in jobs and growth for young people.
Okay, so in this coming election, what do you think are going to be the big topics, the big issues going into May 2014?
Without doubt, I think it's going to be jobs and growth, and people will look very strategically at where the cuts have landed here in Europe and the impact of those cuts, I think, what they will have in their lives. I believe the austerity agenda is going to be top of the conversation, because people will look at what's happened here in Europe and then how that has affected them in the north, whether it's Tories in government in London or in Dublin or in Brussels. You're finding the cuts like a butcher's knife for some of the funding streams that have impacted on many of their lives, and I think that's something that people will be quite focused on.
Okay, Jim Nicholson, would you agree with that? Going into this election, what are the big issues for you?
Well, I think the one thing that has changed dramatically when I came here all those years ago in 1989, the Common Agriculture Policy was 55% of the budget. It's now less than 40%. and by 2020 it'll be 35.
But
So
what
the
about
big
this
challenges
issue
are
of
going
jobs
to
and
be
growth?
is going to be Horizon 2020. How best we can access that, and to the greatest benefit that
That's
we can bring
funding
to
for
draw that
research,
down.
so people that don't know the buzz terms.
The buzz term, yes, and
Yeah.
that's one of the difficulties we get in here. Of course, we are inclined to use those kind of buzzwords.
Talking about the kind of funding that might be available in the future, does that fit in, or how does that fit into what Martina Anderson is saying will be a big issue in this election, which is jobs and growth?
I have to be very brutally honest. Martina and I will disagree on many of these issues.
Sure, so on this
She says-
particular issue.
Pardon? No. Well, which issue?
On jobs and growth.
On jobs and growth, yes, of course, and that is where the Horizon, all this funds are going to actually complement and give assistance to many of our major manufacturers, and more importantly, the small and medium-sized enterprises
Okay.
who will be able to get into those.
Okay, Diane Dodds, your big topics for this coming election.
There is no doubt that jobs and growth will be a huge issue, but also in Northern Ireland taxpayers, as taxpayers of the United Kingdom, pay more to Europe than we get back out of Europe. So we want to get value for money from Europe. So we are looking to explore ever more the funding streams, the opportunities, and helping our businesses to see the opportunities that exist in the European marketplace. Europe is a market of 500 million consumers. It is hugely important that our businesses are enabled to take part in that market and in the exports that can come from that market. Can I say as well, though, that in working in Europe, we work closely with the Northern Ireland Executive. We've worked hard on the issue of regional aid, making sure that Northern Ireland has full coverage so that inward investment can go to all corners of Northern Ireland.
But jobs and growth is the common theme, I suppose, between the three of you, even though you come at it from different angles. But let me ask you each about your chances going into this election. And Jim Nicholson, you first, because last time round you stood on a platform, a joint platform of the Ulster Unionists and the Conservatives. This time round, the Conservative Party have their own candidates. So how do you rate your chances?
Well, I think, Georg, I rate my chances pretty okay, and I certainly welcome it more in sadness than anything else, the fact that the Northern Ireland Conservatives have decided to put a candidate up in this election, because, as you know, it's well known that since 1999 I have worked very closely with the Conservatives and allied to them in this Parliament.
And isn't the risk that your vote will be split this time between the Conservative candidate and yourself?
Well, I think you will find that in Northern Ireland, I think there's one thing Diane and I will totally agree on, there'll be a total multiplicity of unionist candidates in this election, so the unionist vote will be split all over the place. So that is something I'm going into this election on with my experience, my record, and the people will decide. That's the one thing, you never take the people for granted.
Okay, and Martina Anderson, your chances going into this election, because you inherited this post, as I said, back in 2012. So in a way, this is your big test to prove to the electorate that you can be one of Northern Ireland's MEPs.
And I hope the electorate will judge me on the work that I have done, not just over the 15 months as an MEP, but also when I was Junior Minister to Martin McGuinness and my time as an MLA. But primarily, I have to say, it is a European election, and therefore they will judge me primarily on the work that I have done. I am very excited about going into this election. We are the only party that's going in with an all-Ireland team. We're the only party that's standing a candidate for the European election in each of the constituencies of Ireland, and the four of us have got great chances, I think, of representing Ireland when we come back here, hopefully in 2015. But that said, like Jim, I would never take the voters for granted, and I want the voters to judge me on the work that I have done, and I work for all traditions across the north of Ireland and also for the people of Ireland 32.
Diane Dodds, your chances going into this election, you have got this difficult issue, as Jim Nicholson mentioned, of the split unionist vote.
Well, I don't think that I will speculate too much about the election. I think the best thing to do on this occasion is to simply put the record of 5 years of hard work, of representation, both in Northern Ireland and in the European Parliament before the people, and allow them to judge as to how they cast their vote. As I've said before, it has been a huge privilege to represent Northern Ireland in the European Parliament. And I trust that the people will give me that back again for the next 5 years. But in the meantime, it is work as usual.
I'm afraid we've run out of time. It goes very quickly. Thanks very much to the three of you for joining me. Voting in the European elections will take place on the 22nd of May 2014, and details of all the UK's current MEPs can be found on our website. We've now heard from the parties in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. Next time we'll hear from MEPs in Scotland.